Which Pixar short has the most death? The Film Theorists recently did a video breaking down the kill counts of every Pixar film. But there's one major blind spot in that video. They only counted the feature films, which raises an equally interesting question. What about the shorts and series? Many of Pixar's other projects are just as good, dare I say better, than many of their films. So I did what any perfectly sane Pixar fanboy would do. I went through all 17 hours worth of short films, TV specials, and Disney Plus episodes and counted every single on-screen death. And yes, this video is vertical. Hey, TikTok pays me, but YouTube very much does not. Now before we start counting up the bodies, let's re-establish the rules, which will be identical to the Theorist videos. Deaths only count if the creature is shown to be sentient. Deaths must occur on-screen during the film. Deaths must be the result of the characters or actions of the story, and characters brought back to life don't count. And for my purposes, I'm only counting media created by Pixar themselves, which would exclude the Planes movies, which were made by Disney Toon Studios. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command and Monsters at Work both were made by Disney Television, and the Brick Toons shorts, which were done by Atomic Cartoons. Everything else is fair game, so let's get started. Starting with the Disney Plus series, some of which I genuinely think stand up in quality to Pixar's features, even if Disney did force Pixar to make them as pawns in a streaming war that they lost. But as good as some of them may be, these series are relatively bloodless. Forky asks a question and Pixar popcorn barely have narratives, let alone deaths. Doug made joke about a squirrel getting dead in Doug Days, but ultimately he lets the squirrel live. And Dream Productions and Win or Lose, which are both great, both center around preteen, and so understandably remain deathless. That just leaves Cars on the Road, by far the most bonkers entry in the Cars canon. We're talking blatant parodies of The Shining, Mad Max, and Creature features. And considering how high of a kill count Cars 2 had, surely we can count on some carnage in this series. Well, in the Land Speed Racer episode, Mater freaking dies, but then escapes death by outsmarting the Grim Reaper. The car Grim Reaper. That is a real thing that canonically happens. But unfortunately, that would not count due to Rule 4. In the Shining episode, there are quite a few ghosts, but those would already be dead. Also, a friend of mine worked on the show and confirmed to me that there were actual discussions taking place to ensure that this car did not appear to be drowning, leading to a riotous meeting about whether or not cars breathe. But much to my surprise and slight disappointment, the only death in this series that would count for this list is during a flashback in episode 4. When Ivy accidentally crushes a poor stunt car. Meaning over the course of 9.5 hours and 6 full series, our Pixar kill count is only at a meager 1. Well, while we're in the Cars universe, let's take a look at the Cars Toons. In Rescue Squad Mater, lightning is saved from a burning factory before it explodes, but there aren't any shown or implied casualties. Monster Truck Mater ends with Frankenwagon's monster being flipped under the ring, but there's nothing to imply that it didn't survive. Despite Mater's tall tales being action-packed and over-the-top, the only car said to have died is actually Lightning McQueen.
Oh, what happened?
You didn't make it.
But given that Lightning is standing right there, and whether or not any of Mater's stories are even real is questionable anyway, it's not going to count for our list. The Radiator Springs 500.5 does contain quite a few corpses, and the sapience of this little guy in Bugged certainly might change how we see this moment. But unfortunately, the entire Cars Toon series leaves us empty-handed. It's almost like these were made for 6-year-olds or something. Well, no matter. Let's just move on to Pixar's other cash cow, which includes 4 shorts and 2 television specials. And I'll just get right to the point on this one. None of these contain anything even debatably a death. Toy Story That Time Forgot certainly comes close. These toys getting whacked across the room might raise some concerns, but they are shown to be pretty durable. So at this point, we're still only left with the 1 death. Alright, well, let's look at the 50 remaining short films, which will be split up into 3 categories. First up, the theatrically released original shorts. Many of them are emotional and tell well-rounded stories, but are ultimately harmless. Now, one of the first ones that probably came to mind is Bow, whose climax shows a mother literally consuming and swallowing her dumpling son. But this is immediately shown to be a dream sequence, and a projection of her overprotectiveness of her real son, so it doesn't count. Lava certainly raises some questions as to whether these animals would count, since clearly the ones in the opening don't survive the millions of years time lapse. But per Rule 3, none of these count, since the actions of the characters don't affect them. In Sanjay's super team, the title character defeats the monster, but is very much not dead. In Piper, quite a few clams meet their fate. But unlike the birds and crabs, these little bivalves are not shown to be sapient. And that will bring us to Lifted, which shows this alien abductee really taking a beating. But by the resolution, he's clearly snoring and alive. That is, until the credits, where you hear implying that he fell into that crater left by the UFO. I debated whether or not this would count, since if he survived all of this, there's a chance he survives that drop. But if Lee is going to count this guard falling off a building, then I'm going to count this as Linguini's demise. Plus, I am getting desperate. We are 80% of the way through this and have exactly 2 deaths. The next category are the feature-related shorts. So any short film or bonus feature tying directly to a feature film or its characters. Exploring the Reef with Jean-Michel Cousteau shows footage of dead coral and the effects of global warming. But all of those, tragically, were already dead. Mr. Incredible and Pal shows our heroes defeat the Soviet villain. But Lady Lightbulb is clearly alive at the end. Your Friend the Rat is definitely the most interesting, because this educational video covers famine, the Black Death, and mass rodent extermination. This one short has the potential of bringing our death count into the millions. However, according to Rule 3, none of those actually count, because the actual narrative of the short is Remy and Emile teaching the audience about the history of the rat, performing a musical number, and getting interrupted by a disclaimer. That's it. Any of those historical events they covered were merely reported on, and not directly tied to Remy and Emile's action in the short. So, unfortunately, we can't count any of those either. But not to worry, because there is one oft-forgotten short that finally gives us enough carnage to multiply our death count several times over. I am referring to The Legend of Mor'du, the prequel short to Brave, giving the backstory of the titular antagonist. And this one has multiple battles, betrayal, and actual murder. Finally, we're getting somewhere. The narrative is a little vague on Mor'du's body count. We know that he takes out his 3 brothers, but all of the battle scenes are implied or occur mostly off screen. All we are ever told for sure is
He slew a great many.
And great many is not a quantifiable number, even in Scottish. Therefore, I think the only deaths we can technically count are this guy and the 3 men that Mor'du throws off the cliff. Those plus his 3 brothers only brings this very bloody and tragic tale to a death count of only 7. There was so much potential here, but I am more than happy to add some kind of significant number to this count. Alright, final stretch. There's only one category left, the SparkShorts, which do tend to be more mature and experimental. And while most are pretty standard and kill lists, there is one in particular that stands out, Smash and Grab, which tells the story of 2 enslaved robots wanting nothing more than to high-five, and freedom and liberation, which comes with self-defense of homicide. These guys are ruthless, and by the end of the short, they take out a total of 11 guard robots, and if the stewards and Wally count, there is no reason these ones don't, which would mean this 1 6-minute short is responsible for more than half of the confirmed kills in all of Pixar shorts, with an admittedly underwhelming 11 confirmed kills. Now, even though that is the highest quantifiable kill count of any short, there's still easily a case to be made that The Legend of Mor'du is by far the deadliest, maybe even the bloodiest narrative in all of Pixar canon. So, what do we end up with? Well, despite this list telling 96 individual stories over 17 hours, the death count comes to a whopping 20. Wait, that's it? That's barely more than Cars 2 by itself. Maybe leaving out these shorts and series wasn't just laziness on the theorist's part after all. Or maybe these shorts and series tend to be aimed to a bit younger demographic than the films. Or perhaps because they tell shorter stories, there's not enough time to get invested in a character to make the death meaningful. But hey, that's just a theory. A short film theory. Thank you for watching.